Justin and Angela, come on up, would you please? We're going to sit here and we're going to talk a little bit about missions. So Justin has a video, and we're going to, you guys ready to show the video? You can see, do we get it on the back screen or just the front screen? Just, oh, shoot. All right. I'm going to sit down here and watch it because I haven't seen it yet. You guys have seen it. You can stay there.
Hello, we are the Secrist family, and we serve in Madrid, Spain. So one of the main things we do is we work in Youth with a Mission with the Discipleship Training School. And this is a 5-month program where young people come from all over the world to be trained, to be discipled, and then we unleash them to return to their home countries and to transform their communities.
Something that God has put on our hearts recently is to work with the refugees, especially those pouring in from Syria and Afghanistan, Iraq. The need is really great right now, and we've been traveling to different nations with our discipleship training school students, our young people, and training them in children's ministry. We've been working with those refugees, meeting their needs, working with their children in order to bring justice to this situation.
Just this last year, we spent some time in Germany working with refugees, and both Micah and Melody were a big part of that. We're a family. We do ministry together. We teach the young people, these refugee children, about Jesus through games and activities.
We had tons of games and activities and crafts. I had a little paper airplane stand, and I had a little paper airplane contest with all the other kids. We had musical chairs, tons of games, arts and crafts.
Yeah, so Melody, what was something you loved to do?
What I liked was about just making friends and seeing the kids smile.
And it's incredible that they come to this YWAM location in Germany, and they are thrilled that we're teaching their children through games and songs, but teaching the children about Jesus.
God put it on our hearts to get to know the refugees and the situation that they were coming from more, and we wanted to have a connection back to their home. And so one of our students drew a big map of the world, and when the children came in one day, we traced their hands and we wrote their hands in it, and we asked them to show us their nation and where their nation was. And we put their hands all over the map. And as their parents came to get them, or the adults who were taking care of them, I saw people, mainly it was the men that I saw that were really interested in this map, and they came and they put their hands on their nation. And it just really showed us a piece of their heart that they're missing their home, and that's something that we can identify with, all of us. And God just showed that we can love and bless their nation in the midst of this trauma, and we can speak from that and share God's love through that understanding.
Yeah, each of these refugees have experienced an incredible trauma we cannot imagine. All of them have lost a parent, a relative, a close friend. They've been relocated with nothing. They are brought with a backpack of personal items, perhaps, and a cell phone. And to get to know these people, to hear their stories, it just breaks our hearts. And we really believe that God has called us to be His hands, His feet, and to represent Jesus to these people that need hope. They need an answer. So we invite you to partner with us, to pray for us, to come visit, bring a team, come to our place in Madrid. You will love it. It's sunny there 360 days a year. It's absolutely amazing. And God is doing great and amazing things in Spain as well. So we would just encourage you, come, send a young person to a school with us, but be part of what Jesus is doing in Madrid, Spain, and throughout the nations.
Adiós. Dios te bendiga.
In case you don't speak Spanish, Dios te bendiga means God bless you. So. I always like to start this by saying, tell us about your call. You both were called a little differently. So how did you end up getting into missions? And I'll let you share that microphone.
That's very generous of you. Well, like you've already shared, we grew up in a missions home, a missions church, and had missionaries speaking into our lives consistently. And I remember always hearing stories and just being excited about that, and not knowing at the time that was God preparing me. And growing up in the youth group, my favorite moments always were missions trips. We went down to work with Gleanings for the Hungry in Southern California, a ministry with Youth of the Mission that dehydrates peaches and nectarines, and they send it to feed people around the world. We took trips to Mexico. We took trips to all over the world, and every time it was like, wow, this is really exciting. I was born for this. And I didn't know at the time that God was calling me, but later on Angela actually, okay, let me stop. At the 20th anniversary, I believe it was, of Youth of the Mission in Spain, they invited, 25th, thank you. They invited our whole family back to Spain because my father had been one of the founding people there. And so as a family, we came to Spain and heard what God was doing there. And my family said, goodbye. They left me there. And so I did the discipleship training school as a 19-year-old young man. And God just transformed my life there. It was an incredible time of people pouring into me and just confirming what God had been doing. And then I came home, and I was like, what do I do now? What's next in my life? And Angela and I became youth volunteers at our church, and again, led mission trips down to Mexico, led mission trips to Spain. And it was like all this time God was saying, this is what it's about. And so I remember very distinctly in Mexico, in a service there, and Angela and I were dating at the time. We weren't married yet, but we were leading a trip together, and God spoke to me and said, this is what your life's about. I want you to do missions full time. And I leaned over and told Angela that, and she said,
well, God spoke the exact same thing to me at the exact moment, and I was wrestling with whether or not I was supposed to marry this guy here. And I mean, not because there was anything wrong. Give me this. Not
saw
because
that
there
coming.
was anything wrong, but because marriage is, of course, a very big commitment. And so I was, I don't know, Lord, confirm it to me, confirm it to me. And so that actually was the biggest confirmation, was that God called me and almost verbatim the exact words that this is what your life is about, this is what I have for you. And it was like the call, and I looked at him and I thought, I'm going to marry this guy. I just know it. I'm going to marry him. And so the rest is history, as we say.
so it was like a two for the price of one. I got a wife and a calling at the same moment. So it was great.
Fantastic. So how did you end up in Spain? Just for the record, Justin came back and went to Bellingham University of Western Washington University and got a degree in Spanish, of all things. And I'm going, what do you do with a degree in Spanish? You want to teach? No. Well, what do you do with a degree in Spanish? Well, guess what? He went to Spain as a missionary. And so
now it's very useful to have Spanish in Spain.
of all things. So tell us about the specific call to Spain.
Well, we got married, and we were then youth pastors over at what was then Faith Assembly in Lacey, serving God together. And we always felt this deep desire to get back to Spain. Because like I said, I did my school there. 5 months of my life was spent there. And then Angela actually came over and did the school after me. And she was there also 5 months. And there was this one little month of overlap because I stuck around after the end. And so we really met in Spain, even though we both grew up in this town. And like I said, we came back, in the same church. Like I said, we came back, then we became youth leaders and youth pastors. But we were always asking God, is it time to go back? Is it time to go back? And it was always, not yet, no. And we were like, okay, God, what's your plan here? And the time came when the stars aligned and God opened that door again and said, this is the way, walk through it. And in fact, we were at this moment of searching, God, what do we do next? And he directed us to go get some prayer, prophetic prayer from people we'd never met before. And they spoke words to us and said, we see you in missions. We see you speaking in front of large groups of people. We see you going out. We see this call in your life, and we don't even know you. They knew nothing about us, and yet they were confirming what God was speaking. And so we said, okay, God, we'll take the step of faith. And we're like, how do we do this? How do we raise the budget? And God was just super faithful. In 3 months, we raised all the money we needed, and we're out the door to Spain. And we've been there ever since, leading the discipleship training school, like you saw in the video, and sending young people around the world.
You've got a couple of great stories that I'm aware of your outreaches from the school. I particularly want to hear the one about Morocco. You've got a couple of really amazing stories.
Yeah, so because Spain is geographically close to Morocco, You can cross the Straits of Gibraltar there on a ferry and get there in just a few hours by boat. And because Spain and Morocco have a lot of connection, there are a number of Moroccan immigrants living in our very community. And so we really felt like God was directing us to go into Morocco, into this village in the middle of the mountains, in the middle of nowhere, and to teach these children. And our opening is always teaching about English or teaching about human trafficking. But we get in there and we just love on these people who've never met another Christian in their lives. It's the center of Morocco, away from the towns. It's probably 2 or 3 hour drive from the nearest city. It's super remote. And we get there and the people know we're Christians. They assume that because we are from Europe, we're Christians. Because they're from Africa, they're assumed to be Muslims. And so they're curious. What does it mean to be a Christian? How does this work? And so we spent the week there worshiping, and they were fascinated by listening to our music, listening to our songs.
These were not terrorist-type Muslims, though.
No, this is your everyday Muslim person who doesn't, they're all practicing in the sense that to be Arab is to be Muslim, although there obviously are exceptions, there are Arab Christians. But it's more cultural than it is religion they practice because they don't have a relationship with their God. It's very distant. They live in fear that they'll be punished for their sins. They don't understand it. But they saw something different in us. And as we were about to leave, we said, hey, is there anything we can pray for you about? We believe our God does miracles. We'd like to pray for you. And they said, we're in this time of intense drought. It's been about 40 years without a good rainfall. And our crops are drying up. And really, we need snow in the mountains that will melt and give us water all summer long to irrigate our crops. And we don't need a storm because that would destroy our houses. Their houses are made of mud, of straw, barely held together. They needed this light drizzle rain. They said, if you could pray for rain, that's what we want. So we said, okay, our God can do that. And then I thought, oh no, what did I just say? I can't promise rain. I'm not God. I can't make it rain. God, help me, bail us out here. And so we started to pray. And we sang, Let It Rain. And we went and prayed for hours and hours. And that night, nothing happened. We're like, okay, God, it's never in our hands to begin with. This is always about you. But please make it rain. So we went to bed expectant. Woke up the next morning and still no rain. We said, okay, well, we did our part. We prayed. And so we left that town and went to another town the very next day. And that night, we went to bed, thinking this moment has been lost. But the very next morning, we woke up and we saw snow up in the mountains. And a few moments later, we got an excited cell phone call. You are not going to believe it. Your God made it rain. Your God made it rain. And we said, yes, he did. God loves you. And it was just this incredible moment of God responding with the miraculous to reach these people that he loves.
That's a marvelous story. We saw a little bit in your video there of outreach to refugees in Germany, but you've also done outreach to refugees in Greece, literally dragging people out of the water, I think. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, we're not actually, the refugee situation is changing now. And so now the work, before it was pull them out of the water. Right now what it is trying to help them settle and to be somewhat established. So there are refugee centers. So we felt called, we had two choices, Athens or Thessaloniki. And we were praying, and God just spoke very clearly to us about Thessaloniki. And I personally had just dreamy-eyed visions and thoughts of what it was that we were going to do, because as you saw in the video, we had an amazing experience in Germany with the refugees. And to involve my kids, that's just like the best right there. They got to see that, be a part of that. So we thought, oh, God has something so big for us in Thessaloniki. So we get there, and it wasn't anything that I thought that it was going to be. And so it was kind of like this, Lord, why did you tell us to come here? And as we worked with the refugee center, and as we worked with there's a local church and a Christian-run soup kitchen, and we started working, and we started listening to the hearts of these people, and we realized God called us here to encourage the Christians who feel worn out right now with what they're doing. Overwhelmed. And we did a lot of ministry praying over those Christians, telling them, God told us to come to you. He sees you. He understands your heart. He loves you. And we realized it wasn't as much of an outreach where we could involve our kids, but it was just kind of in the nitty-gritty, working in the soup kitchen. They have to keep the Greeks and the refugees separate, two separate lines, because the Greeks are very unhappy about this refugee situation. It is crumbling their already fragile economy. And you have these retired men, and especially the men I saw, that had worked their whole lives and half their pension was removed from them. So now they're in the same line in the soup kitchen, and they're thinking, these refugees are getting what I worked my whole life. So it's kind of a situation where you're like, oh, it's kind of tense. But it was wonderful. We couldn't involve our kids as much as we wanted to. We tried taking them to the refugee center, but there were some brawls that had broken out between the men. You think about refugee, they're not all from Syria. So you have all these different people groups, and they all fight, and they all hate each other. And we put them in one refugee center trying to feed them, and here's showers, and trying to take care of them. And so it wasn't as safe of a place for children as we thought. So, but I do value the fact that we had our kids there, because we walked up and down the streets. We were always out, and we saw homeless people, and my kids got to see how people are living in other parts of the world and what the church's response is there in Greece. So it's a win. It's always a win when you're following God, but it was different than Germany.
Wow. In Spain, right there in Madrid, you also have done a lot of outreach to children. And you've been doing that for several years. Talk to us about the children's outreach.
We worked this out. So she was going to talk about the local. I was going to go outreach, and now it's getting all mixed up. But that's okay.
It's okay. I can do it. So when we first got to Spain, we had been youth pastors. It looked very different, the kind of ministry we were doing. And we get to Spain, and we felt kind of like, what are we doing here? We knew that God called us, and we were working with the discipleship training school. But for me personally, it was a lot like, what's my role in all of this, And I started noticing these parents in the park. Well, I'm a parent. I have little ones. I can go to the park. And literally, God just kind of started touching our hearts. And it was kind of like one person at a time, Justin and Angela. It's okay. Just be yourselves and go to the parks. It's a big community focus there. People live in apartments. They don't have front yards. So what do? They go out. And at social hour, they go to the parks with their kids, and moms and dads talk with one another. So Justin and his Pied Piper that I'm married to here, with his unicycle and his magic tricks and everything, he just can draw a crowd of kids like you wouldn't believe. So it wasn't difficult, and before we knew it, we were making friendships in these parks with our neighbors. And we noticed that the YWAM base there wasn't doing a lot of outreach with the neighborhood. They would say, okay, DTS students, we're going to go into Madrid, which is about a half an hour away. Or we're going to go to the center of town, which is about, 10-minute drive into the center of town. And we'd say, hey, why don't we do something with our neighbors, but we were the only ones. And slowly but surely, God started just kind of using us to influence that change. Even in YWAM, we started doing...
And this is not a little village where they live. It's a huge neighborhood, and there's thousands of people who live right there. So it's a mission field right there.
Exactly. Very diverse. He said, we in our neighborhood are tons of Moroccan Muslims. Okay? Right there, we've got Romanians, Bulgarians, tons of South Americans. You're right. Lots of Spanish, some Americans. So, it's a very diverse community right there. And so we just started doing things in the park with the kids. We would take our DTS students and we'd say, we're going to do a kids program in the park. And we'd just kind of turn on loud music and start doing clown stuff. And pretty soon these kids would come and their parents. And we realized after a while, we are teaching the parents as well. They would sit behind their kids. So our messages were going to the kids and to the parents. And we started a program called Kids in the Park. And it was one day a week for 1 hour. And it taught values: kindness, honesty, how to work on a team, how to be a good friend, all these values that are no longer being taught in the schools. And the parents afterward would say, "This is fantastic. Who are you guys and what are you doing? Do you get paid?" They would ask, "Are you a children's birthday party club? Can we hire you?" And all these questions. And we'd say, "Actually, we live right up there on the hill in the building, and we work youth with the mission. We're Christians." And it just opened this huge door. Now in Spain, if you go up to people and you say, "Oh, we're Christians and Jesus loves you," they say, "Adios. Goodbye. We don't want to talk to you." They shut the door instantly. So you really have to use strategy of building relationships in order to get that door and keep it open. And every Spaniard loves their kids. It is an absolute kid culture. So if you bless the kids, you bless the parents, and you open up this door. So we started this little program, little by little. We're doing it week after week, week after week. And it has now grown into, we have created, not we, but people that we work with, we're a team, created an association through our base. It's a secular association. We're still doing values teaching, even though they know who we are as missionaries, as Christians. We still are kind of keeping it secular, but outside of our program, we can talk to them about the Lord. And we're teaching English classes to the children. We do a big fall festival every year on October 31st because Halloween has come to Spain. And I realized, being an American, how much, even though we have Halloween here, we also celebrate the culture of harvest and fall. And we can kind of rescue, as Christians, this concept a little bit. But there, it's almost like they took all the evil. It is, I can't even take my kids to the store around that time. And so I said to Justin, "We should have a harvest party." He goes, "Nobody's going to know what this is." And the first year, 5 kids showed up. And it was our kids and some of the YWAM kids. And I said, "Oh, well, it's a harvest party. We're going to have fun." And the second year, we got one neighbor lady to bring her son, just one. And last year, we did our harvest party. And was it over 100 people from the neighborhood? I got a radio interview to promote this harvest party. We call it Fall Fest. And we just focus. And I just simply will get up and say, "We're celebrating life today. October 31st. Today is to celebrate life and nothing more." And these kids from all over the neighborhood, we had 70 children and 30 adults. We were totally outnumbered as far as Christian and non-Christian ratio. And these people are saying, "Who are you guys?" We got the councilman over multicultural affairs in the city hall to come. They wrote a newspaper article about us. All from I can see where God is just saying, "I'm going to take this little bit of effort. Just keep being faithful, one kid at a time, one kid at a time." And fast forward 7 years, and look what he's multiplied. So it's very exciting what's happening.
About 45 years ago, the Lord called me and a team of people to go to this town called Torrejón de Ardoz, which is about 20 kilometers outside of Madrid. And we were kind of looking for a place to land. Actually, we've been doing outreaches around the country. We kind of needed a central place. And so we ended up looking in this neighborhood where they are now at some apartments. And there's a number of large apartment blocks. They're 4 stories high. And I think it's about 8 apartments. 8 apartments per block. And so we rented one. And there were the owner's son and family were managing all these. There's quite a community there of apartments. And I'm not sure, maybe a couple hundred apartments. But anyway, the son of the owner became a good friend of ours. And so he said, "I have 2 apartments available." And we were really spiritual at that time. And we wanted to know, there was one on the 2nd floor and one on the 4th floor. And so our team, they were praying, "Lord, which one do you want us to rent?" And right then, there was this large truck filled with coal. They heated all these apartments with steam heat fueled with coal. And so this big truck backed in right as we're standing there praying. And this truck lifted up and dumped all this coal in this bin. And just before, the kids were saying, "Lord, which one do you want? Should you take the 2nd floor apartment or the 4th floor apartment?" And right then, this guy standing there talking to the truck driver goes, "Arriba," which means up. And they go, "Oh, it's the 4th floor." up. So that's how we ended up on the 4th floor. But now YWAM has purchased all of those except for I think one apartment in that block and rented some others as well. So it's really been interesting over the past decades how God has used that as a center. So now you are feeling God's calling to go somewhere else. Tell us about that.
We are, yes. So God has been speaking to us that what we're doing is amazing, but it needs to multiply. We need to go forth. God's given us a word at a national YWAM level to plant bases in every single one of the provinces in Spain. And there are 19 of those. You could think of them like counties. And Youth of the Mission is in maybe 8 of them or so, a little less than half. And so we were like praying about this and thinking as well, God, what do you want us to do next? And He's spoken to us to take the step and go out and to take a team with us and to reproduce, to multiply. And we have trained, left people in place to continue on with the ministries we've started in Madrid. But God is sending us to the coast. So, Costa Tropical, you can put it up there. This is kind of fun. It's called the tropical coast of Spain. And I'll show you a map in a second. But go ahead and go to the next one. My kids couldn't make it today. They are with their grandparents at another church. But you will meet them all next week. But that's what they look like. And you saw them in the video as well. And let's keep going through here. And this, of course, is the Great Commission that God has given us. And hopefully, being a missions church, you all know this scripture by heart. To go and make disciples of all nations. And that's what God has called us to do. And go to the next one. And so really we have 2 focuses that we do. And to be a flashpoint for local and international outreach. And then as well to receive and train the discipleship training school students. And our passion is to get these students trained up to love our city and then to send them out around the world. And some go back to their home churches, some go take a job, some go on for more Bible school training or missions training with us. But these young people that are just eager to have some discipleship, they come and they leave transformed. And so if you can just keep going through here. The other direction, actually. This meant not up, but down. There we go. So this was our neighborhood association that Angela was speaking about, where we teach values. And we just finished a unit on anti-bullying. How do you respond to bullies? Because here in our public schools, in our private schools, they talk about this a lot. But in Spain, they don't. And bullying is a horrible, horrible problem in Spain. And we see kids come home with just a shattered self-esteem because kids make fun of them or their teachers make fun of them. It's even worse. We've heard stories of teachers calling their kids stupid. Like, no, teachers, you can't do that. You're cursing their identity by calling your students names. So how do we deal with this? And so this is just a picture of one of our strategies is when someone calls you a name or bullies you, you put up your super shield. And it bounces right off. And on this super shield, we said, write truth about your life. You know, we're not telling them to write Jesus' truth. Just write truth. And they wrote, I am special. I am loved. This little boy here wrote, I am protected by angels. This is a Moroccan boy, a Muslim boy. His parents, his mother, lives with his mother and his uncle, I believe. His father's died. And angels protect him, he says. Where does he get this idea from? Well, it's through us, through our investment in him over the past years. And this young man was one of the most troubled young people that came to us. Always causing disturbances, always picking on people around him. And now he's one of the best behaved young men in the class. He's our helper. He wants to serve. He's become someone totally different, transformed by the power of Jesus. Now, he's not a Christian, not yet, but he's getting closer and closer every day. And it's just powerful to see that happen. Go ahead and go to the next one. And this is just a few of our pictures of the discipleship training school. There, the 2 girls are serving food in the refugee center that Angela talked about. Down below with me and these children, it's in Morocco. On the picture with the cross there was walking the Camino de Santiago. I don't know if my father's talked about that at all, but it's a pilgrimage people make every year, a spiritual pilgrimage to where the bones of St. James are buried in Spain. So tradition says that when the disciples went out, James went to Spain. And he's buried there, and there's a huge cathedral there, and people make this trek, and they walk from anywhere from a week to 6 weeks, depending where you start, or farther, to make this spiritual pilgrimage. And they're all seeking an experience. They don't know what that is, but we do. And so we walk this with them and say, hey, we know you're looking for something. Let us tell you what it is. It's Jesus. And it's so easy because you say, well, why are you doing the Camino? Well, I want to lose weight or I want to get away. Well, let me tell you why I'm walking the Camino. I'm walking it to share about Jesus because he changed my life.
And the one that we walked on was 100 miles, and we did that in 6 days.
Yep.
Wow.
And there, the church was at the end of that Camino with a good friend of my father's who he discipled.
I want to talk about that.
Go for it.
You see, I can't quite. I stood up to see if I could identify it. I don't think that's him standing up front.
You see you in the picture, don't you?
Do you see?
Yeah.
You see a bald head
There's
there
a
somewhere?
distinguished
Oh,
mark there.
oh yeah, yeah. There you go. The man who founded this church, probably a couple years ago, his name was Luis Bermúdez de Bermejo, and he comes from Torrejon, the town where they've been living. Luis grew up there, and when he was 15 years old, his best friend Gabriel and the kids go out in the evenings and they just walk around. You know, they don't want to sit in these little apartments, so they go out and walk around the streets, and sometimes they do good things and sometimes bad things. But anyway, Luis and Gabriel, our team, went and met him along with many others, and sitting at a doorstep, one of the girls from our team led Luis and Gabriel to the Lord. They got saved. And then they started coming to our apartment every night, they along with about 20 others, and so we discipled them for 4 years. Luis went on, and he decided he wanted to be a doctor. So while in medical school, he started 5 churches. This is from a kid who got saved at 15. While in medical school, he started some churches, and those churches have continued to grow and expand, and it is now an indigenous Spanish denomination. Last time I talked with him, they had, I think, 40 or 50 churches that had been planted out of one kid that got saved sitting on the stoop of a doorstep in Torrejon. And back then, Torrejon was just this dusty little town. It was just who would want to live there? It was an awful place. And he came from there. And so Luis has been a doctor for many years now, and he lives in Santiago. And he started this church about 2 years ago. And we had a great time there. It was just so fun to see him again after all these years, and to be able to. It was interesting because when we got there and told him we were there with this team of YWAMers, we wanted to. He said, "Could he come and have a service?" Oh, okay. He and his people called all the church attenders to show up on a Saturday night for a special service, and they did. The place was just pretty full. It was just really fun to be together with Luis after all these years, and this dear, dear, dear friend and brother in Christ who has done so much for Jesus with his life. And he got saved because of the ministry of Youth of the Mission. So, I mean, there's so many aspects of this going on. So the Camino de Santiago, anybody ever see the movie? I think it's called Camino of Santiago, The Way. Anyway, it's a story about somebody walking on. There are probably, I don't know, 20 or 30 different trails that go to Santiago from all over Europe, actually. Some of them would take months to walk. And people do that, and they've done it since the Middle Ages. And the same trails are still there. So you're walking along these trails through over streams and through people's pastures, and it's amazing. Same trails. But now this thing has gained new interest, and people do it for all kinds of reasons, like you were saying. And so you meet hundreds of people as you're walking along and ask them, why are you doing this? And it's so easy to witness to them because everybody's on some sort of spiritual journey. I'm looking for the meaning of life, or I'm just, kind of trying to figure myself out, or some are, I'm looking for God. But it's a spiritual journey for everybody. So it was a great opportunity to witness, and Justin kind of stumbled across this, I guess, and so now they take their schools on this walk, and kids get blisters on their feet and all kinds of. But it's a great adventure, and it's a great way to witness as well. Angela, I want to ask you, talk to me about what it's like raising kids in a foreign country. It's not the same as here. How do you handle that?
Well, I can say that it's a blessing. It really can be a blessing. On the other hand, it can be really challenging. And so my daughter has picked up Spanish beautifully. She was 2 when we arrived, and she's very social. So even before she could speak Spanish, she was making up stuff and just speaking stuff and acting it out and just trying so hard to connect with these little girls in the park, and it worked for her. And now you should listen to her. And just the other day, she was showing me, you know those little clapping games that kids do? She's doing it all in Spanish. I said, where did you learn that? Oh, in the park, It's all in Spanish. And so she's doing fantastic. My son has had a harder time connecting. And I think that's been probably our biggest personal challenge, is trying to know as a parent, do we push? Do we hold back? Do we stand somewhere in the middle? How do we get this language? The school system is unfortunately very low. It's not just low on an education level, but it's also like there's no bullying programs. The parents aren't even allowed to step foot inside the school to know what's going on. They have right now the ideology of gender, they call it right now. And so the children are just being told, you could be a boy or a girl and nobody knows, but you can explore it. So there's just a lot going on in the schools, and I'm grateful that God called me to homeschool. And I had started that journey. I'm a public school teacher. I taught here for 8 years. And in that, God called me actually to homeschool. I was pregnant with my firstborn. I taught almost all the way up until I had him. And I started the homeschool journey here with him, and I've continued it there. It's been challenging because there are no homeschoolers there. There's no community for homeschool. I'm kind of the Lone Ranger, knowing that God has called me to do this and I need to continue on. So it is very important for us to be outside almost daily, to connect with the kids in the neighborhood, and to do that. Now, but I will say that my children do not see color. They don't see color. They play with these kids from all different nations. Melody's birthday party we had a Moroccan girl, a Romanian girl who was raised in Italy, who speaks Italian fluently, Romanian fluently, Chilean Spaniard Argentine. Who else? But anyway, I was looking at all these little girls and I said, my goodness, and their common language is Spanish. And and my kids grow up on an international YWAM base, and we have a huge hip-hop ministry. So it is quite common in the middle of worship for one of our young people to just get up and rap his worship to Jesus, or get down on the ground and break dance. And this is worship to Jesus. And my kids are like, flow with this. It's like this is normal worship to Jesus. And I realize we are very...
That's why we didn't bring them today.
Yeah. It may have been a little out of control. No. But I realize that's a blessing. My kids are growing up seeing very international. They're so used to hearing different languages, not just Spanish, but like I said, they hear Romanian a lot. We hear Chinese. There's a lot of Chinese people there. And they just kind of go, oh, no big deal. And I realize that's a blessing. They're getting a world concept, right? They're getting this world view of what it is to serve Jesus, how to communicate with someone. When Melody went to Germany, and here, she can't speak German. She speaks English and Spanish. That doesn't work for us. They're in Germany with Syrian refugees. They speak Arabic. And so she started doing hand motions. She just was determined, and Micah too. And I realized, that's from living in this situation we've been living in. This language barrier, who cares? We're going to figure it out. We're going to communicate. So there's a lot of tremendous blessing mixed in with the challenge, I would say.
Great, thank you. We got about 5 minutes more, so anything else you want to share before we wrap it up?
Yeah, so as we were talking a minute ago, we're going to multiply. God has called us to go down, and I want to show a couple of pictures of the location that God's directing us to. So go ahead and go to the next picture, please. So we are now in Madrid, right there smack in the center. The story goes that the king and queen were looking for a suitable capital that was centralized, and they picked the smallest town, but it was right in the middle, and that's why they made it the capital.
Let me amplify that. The king drew an X across the entire country. And let's see where the middle is. And there was this little tiny village called Madrid, and he said.
So there you go. But God is calling us to the south, and we're actually seeing a movement with other missionaries from other organizations as well going south. And so right now, Youth at the Mission is not anywhere in the lower third of the nation. And to me, that's just a tragedy. But there's World Evangelical Crusade, I think it is, WAC missionaries moving to Granada, about 45 minutes north of us. And another group coming from Argentina to that same place, again, 45 minutes north of us. And we're going down to that little dot. It's called Almuñécar. And if you go to the next one, you'll see a little blow up of kind of that zone. And it's right there. That's Andalusia, and it's called the Tropical Coast. And over there on the left, I guess, is the shield of the town, which is actually kind of gruesome. It's got 3 Arab heads decapitated and blood in the water. It was given as a shield when the Spanish kicked the Muslims out of Spain. And Spain was ruled by the Muslims for over 700 years. And so there's a huge Moorish influence in there. And when they were expelled, they gave them this shield in the town. This was one of the last places that they were kicked out of. But go to the next one, please. This is the place. We'll keep going down. There it is. This is called the Tropical Coast. This town has 27,000 year-round residents, and about 20% are foreigners. So it's Northern Europeans, English people that have moved there, and the rest is just families that live there. And then in the summer, people vacation there. But it's not a party town vacation place. It's for Spaniards to come vacation, which is a huge difference. It's weekend homes and things, and so there's a really great family atmosphere. And keep going down. We did Outreach there last summer. There's me with my unicycle and my priest collar. Even though I'm not Catholic, I am an ordained minister, and so I chose to wear that as a symbol, both on the Camino de Santiago and here. And so people say, oh, that's a man of God. I can talk to him. And it's opened up incredible doors to talk. And if that doesn't work, I get in the dinosaur suit, and that gets everybody else. So dinosaur suit for the kids and the priest shirt for the adults, and we got it covered. Let's go to the next one there. And this is us just doing street evangelism down there on the coast. But God has led us down there, one more, to this property that we would love to have. And it's, keep going until we get the picture of the hotel. There it is. There's a hotel for sale. And we've gone down a number of times and looked at a number of properties. We've looked at about 8 hotels. And this is the one that really fits the need for what we have. There's 38 bedrooms, commercial kitchen, dining hall, classroom. It's in a great neighborhood in the center of town, near the shopping, near the beach. And we said, okay, God, this would be incredible. We'd love to have this place. But of course, this is total faith territory, right? We don't have money to buy anything, let alone a hotel. And they're asking $1.75 million for it, which sounds like a lot, and it is. But when you look at how much space there is in the real estate market, it's actually an incredible purchase. And we just are dreaming with God, and we actually started launching this campaign to say, okay, God, are there people out there that would get behind this as well to see Spaniards reach for Jesus in this town that so desperately needs God? And so go ahead and go to the next one. We got, there it is at daytime. It's the lower floor there, and then the basement, and then there's apartments above it. And so keep going. We got a few pictures just to go through here. That's where it's located. So there's the beach ahead. The big yellow circle is where it is. You can see the castle on the hill because it's Spain. There's castles. And a big park nearby where we can do outreach to the children. It's just an incredible location. And let's just flip through and look at a couple pictures here. Keep going. So it's fully furnished, ready to go. That's the lobby, the reception. Keep going. This is just some of the bedrooms. It comes with everything. The beds, the bathrooms, the TVs. This is the dining hall down below, ready to use. They actually ran a soup kitchen out of there for a while. And this is our classroom space. Keep going. The little kitchen, which was a mess. They took pictures of it. It has a pool and a tennis court that the neighborhood pays for and takes care of, which is great. I don't want to take care of a pool, but they have it for us. Super. And so keep going. A little office space and a garage. And one more. Okay. And that is the cross that sits up on the hill overlooking the town. Because although it has a strong Catholic influence, there's also hope for Jesus. And so this is our challenge before us. The owners have asked us to put down a deposit of 10%, which is $175,000 by the end of the month. So like in a week. And we're like, okay, God, we have nothing. This is in your hands. But I believe that we need to dream bigger than ourselves. I don't want to ever be accused of dreaming too small. And say, okay, we could rent a little place with one room and maybe have 20 people staying in this little tiny place. I want to dream for the future. I believe God's calling us to do that. And so that's something that's burning in my heart. I'm passionate about it. I dream about it. And that place could house so many students to run schools and do our neighborhood outreach from the same location. And so that's what's before us. That's the impossible miracle dream that we have, and that's where we're at.